The line at Gate C4 was crawling, a slow-moving snake of restless passengers, rolling suitcases and impatient glances at digital clocks. The Air India flight to New York, AI 112, was boarding. Outside the giant glass wall of Ahmedabad International Airport, the hulking Dreamliner 7878 sat humming gently, its fuselage shimmering under the golden Indian sun. At the back of the line stood a man you wouldn't notice twice. His name was Raymond Sullivan. But no one here knew that. His boots were scuffed, dusty from the village roads. His jeans were faded. His olive green shirt, with a faint patch where a badge used to be, hung loose on his lean frame. A battered military duffel bag hung off one shoulder. No logos, no designer gear, just used. A young security officer at the gate leaned toward her colleague and whispered, not realizing the mic near her lapel was still transmitting, "We've got another local trying to fly Economy International." The colleague chuckled. Dude looks like he walked off a construction site. Passengers nearby snorted. One girl raised her phone discreetly and filmed. The live caption read, "Homeless man tries to board Air India like it's Greyhound." Ray stepped forward, offered his passport. The security officer raised an eyebrow. "Sir, this line is for international passengers." "I know," Ray replied, "that's me." She squinted at the navy blue passport, United States of America. "Are you military?" "Was." She studied his face again. "Do you have any carry-on?" Ray held up his duffel. She sighed. "Step aside, please, we're doing additional checks." He was pulled out of line without explanation. No shouting. No resistance, just quiet compliance. Behind him, families passed through. Luggage wheels clicked over tile. The boarding gate closed. The door locked. The Dreamliner began to roll. Inside the terminal, Ray stood near the window, watching. As the aircraft turned onto the runway, his reflection overlaid the jet, a ghost-like silhouette in the glass, and then a flash, a sound no one mistook. The sky cracked open in a ball of fire. Screams erupted. Phones dropped. People ran toward the windows or away, unable to decide which horror was worse, to see it or to imagine it. The Dreamliner, the very aircraft he was just denied entry to, split into flame mid-ascent. Debris rained like dying stars. The Aura nosedived hard into the earth, an orange bloom swallowing the runway's edge. The security officer stared, frozen. Her headset beeped frantically. The colleague beside her whispered, "Oh my God, that was the plane." Her knees buckled. The crowd roared. And Ray? He didn't speak. Didn't cry. He just placed one hand against the window pane. His palm pressed against the cold glass. His eyes didn't blink, not in shock, but in mourning. Montana didn't scream. It whispered. It creaked under snowdrifts and groaned in pines swaying against the northern wind. There, tucked beyond a forgotten Veterans Community Center, sat a tiny cabin with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox that still read Sergeant Ray S. in chipped white letters. Raymond Sullivan had lived there for the past 9 years, alone. The cabin had no Wi-Fi, no TV, but every morning at 5:45, Ray would step out in full silence, pick up the American flag that had fallen, always fallen, from the crooked pole out front, and raise it again with worn, ritualistic fingers. He didn't swear, didn't mutter, just looked up at it as the wind caught it like breath. He used to be someone people saluted. Back in 2009, he and 5 other Marines were ambushed in a ravine outside Kandahar. An RPG struck their transport. The wreckage caught fire. Ray went in twice, pulled out 2 men burned and unconscious. He went in a 3rd time for the gunner. Didn't come out clean that time. Half his left calf was rebuilt with titanium. He never ran again, but when he got stateside, the welcome home was a letter, not a ceremony. "Your honorable discharge is processed. Thank you for your service." No parade, no crowd. Just a society ready to forget quiet heroes. He tried to find work, but the limp made warehouses look away. His scars made restaurants uncomfortable. His silence made everyone else louder. So Ray disappeared into the woods. And in time, The world forgot him, just as he'd expected. But what the world didn't know was that in that silence he was healing others. 2 winters ago, a volunteer clinic near Billings asked for help fixing a faulty wheelchair for a paralyzed boy. No one came. Ray walked 8 miles through snow and did it in 40 minutes. Never gave his name. 3 summers ago, a woman found him at a rest stop near Yellowstone, stitching up a stray dog's paw with fishing line. No camera, no story, just stitches. Ray didn't post. He didn't tweet. He lived in a world before. Hashtags. And maybe that's why he felt drawn to a different kind of healing, one far from Western eyes. 6 months before Ahmedabad, Ray had a panic attack that lasted 3 hours. His neighbor found him trembling in the woods, heart pounding, mumbling coordinates from some old battlefield. He nearly didn't make it. The hospital wrote psychotic episode, but the nurse on duty, she was from Gujarat. She whispered to him about her brother in India, a man who practiced ancient Ayurvedic medicine, who claimed the mind could be taught to forget through balance, breath, and rhythm. It sounded like nonsense, until nothing else worked. Ray contacted the man through a dusty webcam at the public library. They spoke only through silence and motion. The doctor never asked for credentials, just presence. Weeks passed. Nightmares slowed. For the first time in years, Ray didn't flinch at fireworks. The invitation to come to Gujarat arrived in a brown envelope with red wax. It wasn't fancy. Just a note that said, "We honor still water too. Come when you can." So Ray sold his pickup, bought the cheapest ticket, and crossed an ocean to a land where cows walked calmly through intersections, and old men sold sweet tea in paper cups. He didn't come to be saved. He came to breathe, and during those 3 weeks he walked barefoot through the Rann of Kutch. He sat beside a widow who hadn't spoken since the 2001 earthquake. He showed a schoolboy how to use paracord from a decommissioned parachute to restabilize. His prosthetic leg, he never told anyone his rank, or what war he'd fought, or what medals he'd been buried beneath. When someone asked, "Well, why are you here?" he simply smiled and said, "I had some weight to set down." But even healing journeys end, and when his return date came, Ray packed that same duffel bag, bought a worn leather notebook from a street vendor, and wrote one last note before heading to the airport. "If this is all I leave behind, good." He didn't expect anything on that last day, just a plane ride. Home. What he got was something else entirely. Smoke still clung to the horizon like a bruise across the morning. Outside Gate C4, the crowd had thinned, voices hushed, phones lowered, their screens now turned from ridicule to raw footage, flames, sirens, disbelief. Ray sat on a metal bench, unmoving. His hands rested on his knees like stones in a riverbed. A few feet away, the security officer, Kavya Sharma, stood pale and speechless. Her navy blazer looked too big now, her badge too heavy. Her eyes kept darting to the gate, then to Ray, then back to her trembling hands. She hadn't meant to mock him, not really. It was just habit. The kind of unspoken cruelty baked into airports, classrooms, customer service lines. A reflex. To label. To sort people by appearances. And Ray, in that moment, we had fit a familiar slot until he didn't. The explosion had turned everyone into believers. But what haunted Kavya wasn't the boom, or the smoke, or the crowd scream. It was him, sitting there, alive, when he shouldn't be. She walked toward him, slowly. "Sir, Her voice cracked. She started again. I didn't know." Ray looked up, eyes calm, but unreadable. "No," he said softly. "You saw exactly what you were taught to see." The words sliced sharper than blame. "They weren't angry, just as true." Kavya's breath caught. She dropped to the bench beside him, hands shaking. "I was just trying to keep the line moving. I didn't mean—" He cut her off. "The people on that flight. Do we know who they were?" She blinked. "Manifest is being reviewed. Media says no survivors. It was full." He nodded, his jaw tightening. Then let's remember them right. She didn't understand what he meant. Not until a day later. That night, someone posted a photo. It wasn't professional. Just a passerby's shaky phone pic of Ray, standing alone at the perimeter fence, facing the blackened wreck in the field beyond. He wasn't crying. He wasn't praying. He just stood, hand to his heart. The caption, "Judice, he missed the flight." He didn't miss the moment. By morning, it had over 400,000 shares. A freelance journalist traced the image back to the airport. Found Kavya. She refused to speak. But someone leaked the gate audio, the internet. Exploded. "This is how we treat veterans?" He was mocked. Then he mourned. That's real dignity. Silent hero climbed to top trending. Meanwhile, Ray had left the airport quietly. He didn't seek interviews. He went back to the Ayurvedic clinic where he'd first stayed, tucked, away between mango groves and painted shrines. He asked for a broom and helped sweep ash from the temple steps. No press found him for days, but that didn't stop the storm. Across social platforms, people began posting stories of their own forgotten heroes. An uncle who died nameless, a nurse who worked through the pandemic in silence, a grandmother who fed a village, then faded into memory, all tagged Fying Silent Hero. A ripple turned into a wave. Then came a letter, scanned and uploaded by a small Indian newspaper. "This man saved my father's life in Helmand. He carried him half a mile under sniper fire. My father never forgot. We've searched for him for 15 years. His name is Ray." Dr. Arvind Vaidya, Gujarat. The twist was stunning. The quiet American veteran had once rescued the father of the very doctor who had invited him to India. A full circle made of chance, fate, and threads no algorithm could trace. Media outlets scrambled. Some still tried to label Ray the lucky one, but others started listening, really listening, and found out this wasn't a fluke. Ray had been doing this, showing up, helping, disappearing, for years. No fundraisers, no photo ops, just footprints that never asked to be followed. And yet now, the world was following. Back at the airport, Kavya returned to duty, though her superiors offered leave. She chose to stay. Her badge still read her name, but now she taped a small note beneath it. 4 words, handwritten. "I see you now." And every time she checked a boarding pass, she paused just a moment longer. Ray wasn't hiding. Not exactly. He just didn't answer his phone. The clinic had no reception. The dirt roads leading to it were wide enough for cows, not journalists. But still they came. Reporters, vloggers, even a morning show host flown in from Mumbai. Cameras slung and questions cocked. But when they arrived, they found an old man sitting cross-legged beside a clay stove, peeling turmeric roots for tea. He looked up, smiled, and kept working. "Mr. Sullivan, the world wants to hear from you." "Then let the world talk to itself," Ray murmured. He wasn't trying to be profound, just honest. The attention wasn't the struggle. Ray had lived through worse. What pained him wasn't the spotlight. It was the way it ignored the shadows. Because 231 people had died on flight AI 112. And now, all anyone wanted to ask was how he had lived. So Ray did something no one expected. He asked to meet the families. It started with one, a father who lost his daughter Mira, a 22-year-old violinist headed to Juilliard. They met at a modest temple garden. No reporters, no microphones, just 2 men. One breathing, one broken. Ray bowed his head and said what no camera would ever catch. "She should have been the one still standing." The father replied, voice hoarse with grief. "Maybe, but now you stand in her place. Don't waste it." Word spread. Quietly. Ray met another family, then another. He never wore the same shirt twice, not out of fashion, but humility. Each time he carried a small notebook and asked them to write one sentence about their loved. One, just one. Not what they did, who they were. "I hated mushrooms. She used to dance while brushing her teeth." He once gave a stranger his shoes and walked home barefoot. Ray filled 57 pages. No names, just moments. A week later, a memorial was held at the Swaminarayan temple. Ray was invited but declined the podium. Instead, he handed his ID notebook to the head priest and said, "Read these, that's enough voice for me." And so, one by one, the words were read aloud in the courtyard under fading light. No one clapped, no one cheered. But when it ended, no one moved. The silence was thicker than grief. It was sacred. Back in the States, the story refused to die. American veterans groups found out who Ray was. Photos surfaced of his Bronze Star ceremony, a younger, stiffer Ray saluting in pain, wrapped in bandages, refusing the wheelchair offered to him. Articles appeared, "The hero we forgot," "Man of no words, mountains of action." But Ray never confirmed any of them. When asked for comment, he simply said, "Whatever they need to believe, let them." What he hadn't expected was what came next. A letter arrived, not through press, not through politics, but through a folded napkin slipped under his door one dawn. Inside, in tight handwriting, "My brother was on that plane. I work at the cafe you walked into 2 days ago. You smiled, you thanked me, no one else did. You gave me a reason to believe people like him aren't gone." That was the first time Ray cried. Not for himself, but because someone somewhere had finally connected the dot between presence and purpose. He had not spoken on a stage. He had not given an interview. He had not raised a single hand to demand justice. But somehow the light had found him anyway. The crowd at Mumbai's International Memorial Arena was electric. It buzzed like a storm trapped inside glass. Rows upon rows of mourners, dignitaries, survivors, and spectators filled the space, all drawn by the same name printed in bold on every seatback card. Raymond Sullivan, guest of silence. They didn't know what to expect. He hadn't accepted interviews, hadn't posted, hadn't spoken to the camera even once. But somehow he was everywhere. A man who didn't speak had become the loudest sound in the world. Behind the stage, organizers whispered frantically, "Has he arrived?" "He's here." Refused. The car. Walked in through the back, no security. What's he planning to say? That's just it, he won't tell us. On stage, the screen behind the podium showed a mosaic of faces, the 231 souls aboard Flight AI-112. They blinked gently in and out, their smiles frozen in time. The lights dimmed, the room stilled, and then Ray walked on. No intro, no preamble, no music, just boots on wood, steady and worn. He approached the microphone like it was a campfire, slowly, without demand. He adjusted it once, then stepped back. Silence. 2 seconds. 5. A full minute. Some thought there was a tech issue, a few whispered. One child asked aloud, "Is he okay?" Ray's eyes scanned the arena. Not for applause, for names, for the parents he'd met, the boy with no sister, the wife who still set 2 cups of tea. Then, without touching the mic, Ray spoke, not into it, just aloud. "I was taught that if you survive what others don't, you don't ask why. You ask how you'll carry it." The mic caught it. The room leaned in. "I didn't earn your attention. I got it by accident. I stood still long enough and you looked. That's not mine to keep. So let me give it back to the people this belongs to." He reached into his coat and pulled out the leather notebook, worn, almost splitting at the spine. He opened it, flipped pages, then stopped. Read. She hummed to herself when nervous. She never said it out loud, but it calmed her. "I wish I'd paid more attention." Ray's voice didn't break, but his fingers trembled. He read another. He could never remember birthdays, so he gave gifts every Sunday instead, just to be safe. And another. "I used to tease him for loving cloud shapes. Then I saw him die in one." A hush fell so deep you could hear the stage lights hum. Ray shut the notebook. You don't need a stage to make noise. You just need a truth that doesn't care if it's heard. From the front row, Kavya sat with a scarf pulled tightly around her neck. Not to hide, to stay grounded. She hadn't spoken since the audio leak went viral. Her face had been dragged through headlines. Airport agent blocks vet from doomed flight. She almost killed a hero. But here, under the lights, Ray looked straight at her. He pointed, and the screen behind him changed. Security footage, grainy, time-stamped, the moment she stopped him at the gate. Her words, her laughter, the shift in his face. Gasps erupted. Oh wow! Ripple of shame swept the room. Some shouted. One man stood furious. She should be fired. She laughed at a man who saved lives. Kavya didn't move. She shrank. But then, Ray raised his hand, and the room froze. He turned. Back to the microphone. That's not how this ends. He walked toward the edge of the stage, closer to her. She didn't know. She saw what the world trained her to see. I don't blame her, because I used to see people like her the same way. A beat, then with every camera in the room focused. On him, Ray knelt on one knee, not to beg, to level. Forgiveness doesn't come with applause, it comes with understanding. And if we can't offer that, then what did I survive for? The cameras caught it. The crowd stood. First one, then another, then everyone. Applause didn't come like thunder. It came like rain. Soft at first, then steady, then overwhelming. Some cried. Others just stood, stunned. And on social media, clips of the kneel flooded. Timelines. A veteran knelt, not in protest, but in protection. He saved a flight by being mocked, then saved the one who mocked him. In a control booth backstage, a producer whispered, "This isn't a memorial anymore, it's a revolution." And somewhere in that roaring silence, Kavya stood up, walked to the stage, and without words placed her scarf in Ray's hands. He folded it, kept it, no hug, no spotlight, just recognition. After Mumbai, the world didn't move on. It just shifted. News cycles spun as they always do. But something about Ray's silence lingered in the global bloodstream. Like smoke after fire. Like the echo of a bell long after it's rung, and the letters started coming. They didn't arrive in neat stacks or envelopes with gold seals. They came folded into paper cranes, tucked into library books, slipped beneath motel doors, even etched into coffee sleeves. Some were from India, others from veterans in Utah, nurses in Kentucky, a high school kid from Singapore. Every one of them different, yet all saying the same thing. You reminded me of someone I lost. You showed me how to forgive what I never thought I could. You didn't scream, and somehow that was louder. Ray didn't answer them all. He couldn't. But he read each one. Some he held like warm stones in his palm. One came from a man named Jared, age 34, from Newark, New Jersey. My flight was delayed. I was rebooked to the next morning. AI 112 was my original ticket. I should have been dead, but I wasn't. Because someone mocked you, and you let them. You didn't fight to get on that plane, you just stepped aside. That moment, that simple surrender, saved me. I'm not sure why, I just know I owe you my life. And I plan to live like it. Ray read the letter twice. Then a third time. He took the next train to Ahmedabad. Jared had flown back to India for the first time in a decade, retracing the journey he almost never completed. They met at a quiet chai stall outside the airport, the same one Ray had waited. Before his denied boarding, Jared stood when Ray approached. No handshake, no words. He just wrapped his arms around the old Marine and held on like an anchor. When they sat down, Ray pulled a box from his duffel, small, square, made of polished wood. Inside, resting atop a worn piece of military cloth, was a gleaming insignia, the Navy and Marine Corps medal. Ray placed it in Jared's hand. I wore this when I pulled men out of fire. I want the next thing it pulls to be your purpose. Jared couldn't speak. He nodded, tears streaking without shame. Later that night, back at the quiet guest house outside the city, Ray opened a letter from his mother, sent years before, still folded like it had just arrived. Silence is not absence, Ray. It's the soil where peace grows. Plant what you've earned. Don't wait for the world to tell you it's time. He sat down beside the scarf Kavya had given him, and for the first time in his life, Ray Sullivan slept without dreaming of fire. Ray never created a foundation. He didn't trademark a phrase or launch a movement. But that didn't stop one from forming. In a matter of weeks, something unusual began to grow online. Not flashy, not loud, but consistent. A rising chorus of stories, all ending with the same 4 words. Because of Ray Sullivan. A woman in Canada posted about leaving her abusive husband after watching Ray kneel for forgiveness. A firefighter in Brazil began recording silent tribute videos. No words, just gestures, to the people he'd saved and lost. A child in Tokyo made a school presentation called "The Man Who Didn't Clap Back." But it was the veterans who moved first. A retired colonel in San Diego announced the creation of Veterans Without Voice, a collective of former service members committed to acts of anonymous service. No press, no badges, just action. Their motto: show up, shut up, serve. Ray refused to lead it, but he allowed his name to be used, not in the title, but in every quiet act they performed. One night, at a small church in South Carolina, someone found a folded American flag on the pew with a note, "From one ghost to another, stand proud, you're seen." It went viral. Again. At the same time, across the world in Ahmedabad, Kavya's life had changed too. She'd transferred to a different department, airport special assistance. Her new job wasn't about checking documents. It was about helping passengers who no one else noticed. The elderly, the disabled, the nervous, the invisible. On her ID badge, under her name, were the same 4 words Ray once told her. You saw what you were taught. Next to it, a sticker that simply read, I see you now. Every time she guided someone through the terminal, she did so with patience sharpened by shame, softened by grace. One day, a boy with autism panicked at the security checkpoint. Kavya knelt, the same way Ray had, and whispered nothing. Just waited. Slowly, his hand found hers. They walked through, steady and silent. A nearby traveler filmed it, captioned it. He taught her. Now she teaches us. And Ray, he traveled less. Spoke even less than that. But once a month, he visited a small local school near the foothills of the Himalayas. A quiet building with cracked walls and bright eyes. He didn't teach math or science. He taught something else. He sat in a circle with the children, handed them blank pages and asked, tell me one sentence about someone you miss. They wrote, they smiled, they cried. And in that room, filled with tiny voices and silent stories, Ray finally let himself sing. Not with music, but with listening. The cabin in Montana hadn't changed. Snow still laced the treetops. The flag still leaned on its crooked pole, fluttering like breath. But inside, something was different. Ray stood by the window, mug in hand, steam curling upward into the morning light. His hands were slower now, not from age, but peace, the kind that settles in when the war inside you finally loses interest. On the shelf sat the notebook, now full. Next to it, a single framed photo, not of himself, but of the children in that Himalayan classroom, all holding up their one-sentence pages like trophies. He smiled. At noon, he walked outside, boots crunching over frost, and planted a small wooden post in the earth. On it, he hung a simple sign, handwritten, no capital letters. If you have silence, sit here. That's it. No story, no signature, just an invitation. 1 week later, a young man passing through saw it, a traveler, maybe a veteran, maybe a nobody. He sat, said nothing, left a stone behind. Others followed. Soon the patch of earth grew into a circle. Visitors left notes, dog tags, scarves, songs scribbled on napkins. No one spoke aloud, but somehow the silence grew louder. One morning, Ray wasn't at the flag. The mail carrier found the door ajar, a kettle still warm. On the table was his mother's letter, refolded one last time. Beneath it, the metal Jared, returned to him years later, left without comment. But out back under the trees, someone had carved 3 words into the bench by the silence sign, not his quote. Not a mantra, just this. He stayed soft. And in the months that followed, as the world surged on with noise and flash, the videos of Ray still made their quiet rounds. One in particular, just 12 seconds long. Ray, standing in a temple courtyard, head bowed, hand to heart. A little girl beside him reaches up, slips her hand into his, and he doesn't look down. He just squeezes. That's the final note. Not thunder, not applause, just a touch, and a silence you never forget. If this story moved you, don't let it be the last. Subscribe now for more powerful tales that stay with you long after the final word. Real stories, real emotions, just like this.